to briefly talk to us about the library ballot issue. I'm going to do a speed presentation today because we've got a full program. Can you hear me? Okay, I'll lean in closer. If you live in the Boone County Library District, and that is anywhere in Boone County that is not Centralia or within the 1965 city limits of Columbia, you'll be asked in April to approve a 21-cent increase in your library operating levy. That money will be used to put branches in Ashland and north of Columbia. The place we're looking at right now is on land that's owned jointly by the city and the county. There are many benefits to this approving this. It will enhance the availability of library services across the county, and in 2017, 5 cents of that 20-cent increase will be retired, and the branches will be paid off, and so will the Columbia Public Library. At that point, then the operating levy within the Columbia Library District and the Boone County Library District will be roughly equal, and that will open the door for a restructuring of the library district. The other thing I'd like to say is that the north site was not chosen easily. We went through an extensive long-range planning process. I was on the committee. So we are trying our best to accommodate as many people as we can in northern Boone County. I urge you to vote yes on April 3rd. I think that's the right date. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We wanted to share just a few things with you regarding the upcoming bond issue. Dr. Chase Senator regrets she had some issues with her mother that she needed to attend to and is out of town. So she asked that I come and talk about the bond issue. My game plan is in my 10 minutes, I'm going to quickly go through my slides and then hopefully have 4 to 5 minutes for questions. As was previously stated, the election is April the 3rd. We have a $60 million bond issue on the ballot, a no tax increase issue to improve our facilities. Our facilities committee has undertaken an 18-month planning session, and we have a goal of providing the community with high-performance schools, optimal learning environments as efficient as possible. The Long-Range Planning Facilities Committee had 3 focuses. When you look in the lower left-hand corner, the first was educational adequacy. That means, do we have enough space in our buildings for kids? And not just classroom space, because our classroom space, I think, is pretty good, is real good. But do we have enough space, enough restroom space, physical education space, cafeterias? We used a planning model, or a rubric is the current term, a test, if you will, based that architects have said is what a good school looks like in 2006, and compared that to all of our buildings. We trained teachers and building services staff to evaluate the buildings, and our staff did this evaluation. The second phase was a technical study or an engineering study. We literally hired architects and engineers, a firm, to come in. They evaluated systems. The result is a 30-year spreadsheet, if you will, of anticipated and predicted maintenance, failures, and replacement processes for the next 30 years. And then the last point was a community engagement study where a group of your colleagues came together, developed a perceptual survey. We did one night in the community, then put online, and we had a little over 1,200 responses to that survey. The recommendations: reduce overcrowding in schools. Our class sizes are at the desired, the best standard possible for the state of Missouri. Hence, we have 154 trailers in our buildings. The overcrowding issue comes in restrooms, cafeterias, media centers, PE spaces. Improve physical and learning environments. Air quality is an issue everywhere right now. Improving those environments We're looking to try to add air conditioning to schools, but when you air condition for the summer, you also condition the air to prevent mold, other bad air quality things during the winter too, to improve that air quality for those kids. We know the optimal learning environment is about 68 degrees to 72 degrees, and we need to figure out how to get our buildings there to help that academic achievement. Reduce the number of student transitions. Simply what this means is our current high schools are 10 to 12. We're looking to go to a true high school configuration of 9 to 12. So a child goes from elementary to a middle level to a high school. Now they go from elementary, middle school, junior high, high school. We know that academic achievement suffers every transition. And then work to increase the life of the buildings. Missouri does not provide any funding. That's what the Council for Educational Equality lawsuit is partially about. One of 3 states in the nation that does not provide any funding. It's up to local citizens to fund capital projects or facilities. I think I'm probably preaching to the choir on this one. I think you all are pretty active and know that we have an operating levy that pays for salaries, benefits, utilities, supplies, and bond issues are paid out of that debt service levy, and that's separate, and we set each of those separately every year. Right now we have kids in 33 sites. 30 of those are school buildings and 3 auxiliary sites. We have about $2.6 million square feet of space. Now this next one is an interesting statistic that I'd never really cared about until last winter. There's 516 acres we maintain. Now I've heard from some of you in the summer when the grass was too tall, and I appreciate that call. We needed to get that cleaned up. But of that 516 acres, there are 40 acres of surface area that most people want plowed in the winter. And it wasn't a problem until that ice storm. In that 40 acres, there's 2 miles of sidewalks between the back of a building and a trailer door. So that really got us. That was the tipping point, if you will. I think we've done a great job on buildings in the past. Our community has built good buildings. The interesting statistic there for me, just as a history teacher, at Lee is 72 years old, but there's been a Columbia Public School building on that site for 102 years. 3 votes, 180 million total, 60 million each, and we'll address facilities plan goals and technology. New construction of a little over 40 million, technology of 5 million, air conditioning of 7, and building improvements of 6. The new construction is an elementary school based on Paxton Keeley size and a third of a high school. We'll build the high school out in 3 phases. Technology, projectors, laptops, and smart boards. For those of you that haven't been in a school building for a while, a smart board looks kind of like that screen, only you walk up to it and touch it and draw on it, and it comes out in your computer. Air conditioning for these buildings. The rest of the buildings will follow in subsequent bond issues. Just general building improvements. If you, like me, live in a 50-year-old house, you're doing that to your home all the time. And the election is the third, 60 million, no tax increase, because we're paying off bonds from previous years, and the growth in our community and assessed valuation generates a few more dollars for us to allow us to get by on the 80 cents that's currently in our debt service. I'm not quite sure of my time, but 3 minutes. I'll be glad to take questions. Yes, sir.
Why is it deemed essential today to reduce the number of student transitions when just a few years ago it was deemed essential to increase the number of student transitions? And we spent a lot of money in that direction.
Well,
please explain why you're right and they were wrong.
You know, that is an excellent question. I'm probably not going to get out of that one. We know from looking at our test scores that every time a student changes, it upsets their lives. So we move through that. The money that we spent will continue to be used because instead of, we'll have a reconfiguration from where it currently goes 6 through 9, and it goes 6 through 8, but we will use all those buildings. They're configured for the programs right now, and there may be some remodeling. So there will not be any loss in that particular thing. The addition will be coming in at the high school. We'll add a few extra teachers at the high school for some of the specialized classes. But we know at this point in time, when we look at the No Child Left Behind, the MAP testing, and look at our test scores, that the districts that have fewer transitions and the documentation on student performance shows those transitions hurt our kids. And it's partially a change in educational philosophy, but when we went to this way, when our district went this way in the mid-90s, it was about 10 years behind other districts. Those kids were performing well, but there's a whole new series of testing and a new series of requirements now. Yes, ma'am.
Why did you rule out North 570 as a site for a new high school?
There hasn't been a site selected for the new high school at this point. There has been a donation of land, but there hadn't been a site selected. I would anticipate the school board, assuming passage of this bond issue, will start addressing that in the next month or so. Yes, sir.
Refresh my memory on the size of Hickman and Rockbridge now, and then tell me what the built-out size of the new high school is.
Hickman is just a little over 2,000. Rockbridge is a little under 1,800. The built-out size of the new high school will be about that 1,800 level.
Awfully large schools.
Yes, yes, they are.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the school board candidates to come forward, and as they're coming forward, I would like to tell you that each of these candidates is going to give you a 5-minute introductory statement. At that time, the floor will be open for questions and answers. There will be no moderated questions from me, and so you will have an opportunity to address your questions to each candidate or to all of the candidates. I would like to thank each of the candidates for coming and speaking with us today, and we will just ask them to speak in the order of which they have seated themselves. And so, Mr. Tan, if you would come forward. We have Michael Tan, we have Jan Mees, and we have Carla Despain here with us today. And so, Michael, if you would come forward and talk to us about your plans for becoming a school board member.
Ladies and gentlemen, the yellow light will come on for 2 minutes, flashing yellow at 1 minute.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all for putting this event together. I believe this is the second time I'm here, and just as nervous as the first time. I think it's not easy, even though it's the second time around. It's never easy, I think. So I want to thank the Mule Skinners for putting this event together to have us introduce ourselves and talk about why we're running for the school board election. I'm Dr. Michael Tan, and I have been a Columbia resident for about 10 years or so. I lived in Columbia for 10 years. Before Columbia, I lived on the East Coast in Massachusetts for about 4 years, and then prior to that, I lived in the Midwest, in the state of Wisconsin. That was where I went to school. I have a wife, and we've been married for, my wife's Rachel, and we've been married for 27 years. And we have 3 children. Two of our kids have since graduated from Hickman High School, and they're in medical school. And I have a daughter who is a junior at Hickman High School, so we still have 1 child in the Columbia Public Schools. I just want to add something about the Columbia Public Schools, and we have been real pleased with the education that the Columbia Public Schools have provided for my children. They have been successful, and I'm very grateful for that. In the daytime, my daytime job consists of being an associate professor at William Woods University. I'm in the education profession, so I teach in the undergraduate program. We prepare elementary and secondary teachers. And in the evenings, I also take on additional responsibilities of teaching in the master's program and also in our specialist program. So that's what I do professionally. And other than that, I would be spending time with my family. The reason why I'm running for office for the school board is because I care for the kids and their success, their achievement. I want to give back to the community what they have done for me and my family. Also, I would like to be a voice for all the stakeholders, the students, parents, teachers, and the community. I would be willing to listen to what the community has to say and what all the stakeholders have to say so that we can better improve our education in the Columbia Public Schools and also make our schools better. This is the second time I'm running, so hopefully I will be successful with your support and your vote. And I want you to know that I can be trusted to make good and informed decisions. I will weigh in on all the different sides before I make a good and informed decision. And I'm not afraid to challenge the status quo, because that's something that a school board member should be able to do if you want the school system to run effectively. I don't believe in rubber stamping any thing that comes to the table, because we really have to be critical in what we're doing and making sure that our money is well spent and that we have used our resources efficiently. And I hope to be able to do that, and I ask for your support this April 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tan. I'd like to now introduce Jan Meese.
I jumped up a little. You would think I was excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you all today. It's been a pleasure to be here and meet you all. I also want to thank Tim Harlan, who volunteered or was coerced into being my campaign chair. Tim and I have known each other for as old as our children are old now, and he's regaled me with stories about the political process, and I told him he really needs to write a book. I'm the neophyte on the campaign trail, so this is a little bit unnerving, but I hope to give you some background into me and why I am interested and why I would be a good member of the Columbia Board of Education. My husband and I have been married for 36 years. We're a little farther away from Carolyn and Mr. Luthold there, but we're going to get there. We've lived in Columbia for 33 of those years. We have 2 grown sons, and I was a stay-at-home mom with those boys for the first 10 years. I began volunteering in Columbia Public Schools when our oldest boy was entering kindergarten in 1980. Ever since that time, I have been a Columbia Public School cheerleader. I volunteered in schools throughout their careers. I also became an employee of the Columbia Public Schools in 1984 as a support staff person in the library at Fairview. I then proceeded to earn my master's degree in library science in 1993, and I served as a library media specialist at 3 different elementary schools, Cedar Ridge, Grant, and Russell. Then I was asked to open the new library at Lang Middle School, and my final job with Columbia Public Schools was at Hickman High School as the media director for 7 years. During the time that I was an employee of Columbia Public Schools, I also served a 3-year term as president of the Columbia Community Teachers Association. This experience that I had working representing all of our teachers and students and our personnel and working with them has given me some very important experience in working with the Board of Education and knowing what a Board of Education member is expected to do. After 21 years, I retired from Columbia Public Schools. Over those years, I've worked with thousands of students, hundreds of teachers, multitudes of parents. This broad personal experience, I feel, makes me very qualified to work as a board member to serve you. The mission of Columbia Public Schools is clear. We are here to help our students achieve to their personal best. Our district is one of the finest in the state. Columbia is blessed with dedicated professionals, great personnel, extremely competent administrators, and a very supportive community. We must maintain that excellence, but challenges are ahead for our district. Such things as including future funding, federal mandates, the achievement gap, accountability, growth, aging facilities, and attracting and retaining good teachers with adequate pay. The main tenet we have to keep in our minds is to help our students achieve to their personal best. When I worked in the school libraries, every student who came into my door was a one-of-a-kind customer. Everyone had an individual need that I was there to meet as a professional educator. Every student in Columbia Public Schools is special. I want to do what's best for kids. I want to work with you and represent you as a school board member. I will be an active board member. I will listen carefully to community concerns. I will not be unduly influenced by any special interest groups. I will carefully consider all sides of an issue before I make a decision. I'm an experienced parent and professional educator with 21 years' experience in our school system. I will always make decisions to do what's best for kids. And I have a quote from Abraham Lincoln that really struck me. It said, "A child is a person who is going to carry on what you have started. The fate of humanity is in his hands." I want to give our children the tools that they need to succeed in the future. I would appreciate your vote on April 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I'd now like to introduce to you Carla Despain.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the Mule Skinners for having this forum. And as Dr. Tan said, I've been here before. I'm not new at this, but my other activity today is actually playing the piano for my daughter in music contest in Mexico, Missouri. And as nerve-wracking as this is, that's worse, let me tell you. I do have 2 children who are in Columbia Public Schools currently. I've lived in Columbia for about 27 years, had 2 stints away each of a year for my husband's training. My husband and I have been married over 27 years, so it's my personal life in a snapshot. I believe the Board of Education should continue, as we have done in the past couple of years, to evaluate everything through the goals that have been set, that we set. The board set the goals and has asked the superintendent through the staff to continue to filter everything through these goals. And the goals aren't really rocket science. I would hope that any school district would look to these goals, but we see some that don't. And so it's important, I believe, to state those and to make sure they're in front of everyone all the time. First, to increase student achievement for all students. Second, to eliminate the gaps that currently exist in achievement levels between and among groups of students. And then finally, to use our resources to their best ability, to maximize the efficiency of all our resources. And all the activities within the school district need to filter through those 3 goals. To increase student achievement, the district has to focus on those activities that matter most for the students. The district has to continue to provide help to parents with small children through Parents as Teachers to get a good start. The district has to work hard to help families as they enter the school system with their first child, because that relationship can make a huge difference in the achievement of their children. When parents are involved, kids do better. We need to continue and work harder to encourage that. And we have to continually monitor the achievement data. Of course, we have things that have been put upon us in terms of monitoring that data. But one good thing that has come from all that is that the data is looked at differently than it used to be. Averages don't tell you how all kids are doing. And we have to look at that more carefully to see where things are being missed and what needs to happen to address those issues. So we need to look at things like the program that's being proposed called Great Expectations, that looks at longitudinal growth for kids instead of just snapshots of how they're doing. To eliminate disparities, we have to address concerns for families in need. We know that if a child starts at a deficit but can receive parents as teachers and early childhood education, we can bring those kids up to grade level expectations within the first couple of years. The mentoring program at West Boulevard Elementary School has gone a long way to help kids who don't have adults in their lives that have time to help them with their schooling, and it gives them another adult within the community. The MAC Scholars Program is a program that's being looked at by people outside of our district as an example of ways to encourage kids that are minorities to value high achievement and look at AP programs and college level programs that they can handle but have not been encouraged in the past. And we have to continue to encourage our best and brightest minority students to pursue the field of education as an area for their professional schooling. Finally, we have to maximize our resources and continue to do a good job with the taxpayer dollars. And I want to address real quickly the 9th grade configuration, because one of the big changes is that there are now additional requirements for kids to graduate from high school, and 9th graders being outside the high school forget that they're getting credits already. And when they start losing credits in 9th grade, they don't tend to get to graduation. It's harder to recoup those. So it's very important at this point in time to get our 9th graders into the high school to understand that. I ask for your support on April 3rd, and I appreciate you having us here. Thank you.